Hey y'all, it's a new week at the Hyatt House and we're still waiting on subs. No progress has been made and I have nothing exciting to report. So we're gonna use this week to do some digging into some history. Now, one thing that has been bothering me is this is the Hyatt House, but over on Main Street is the Lockwood Hyatt House. I don't understand why there's two houses, especially because that one is dated after Lockwood Hyatt died. So let's do some research and see if we can figure out the mystery of why there are two Hyatt houses. Okay, so we are on Main Street. Downtown is right down there. And this is the Captain James Clark house. And the date on that house is 1891. And right beside that is this house. I don't know if you can read that sign, but it says Lockwood Hyatt House, 1893. This has been driving me crazy because that wasn't Lockwood Hyatt's house, and he died in 1893. So typically the signs on these homes list either the first family that lived there or a really prominent family. Now we know the Hyatts didn't live there until 100 years after the Hyatt House was built. But their name was added because Lockwood Hyatt was very, very well known in town. My house, which is right over there, it's the yellow one, I named that the Charles Maston house because Charles Maston built it. So what's the story on this Lockwood Hyatt house? So if you've been following along, you know that I have been doing deed searches on the house. And I was able to track down the history of the house from 1785, when John Gray Blunt and Thomas Blunt built it, all the way through Lockwood Hyatt. But he died in 1893, and his wife died shortly after. And I haven't been able to figure out who owned the house between 1893 and 1967. But I recruited some help. We did some more digging and we figured it out. So you remember a couple of weeks ago when we talked about graves, I showed you the graves of Olivia and William Grissom. Olivia was Hyatt's daughter and she married William, and William and Olivia inherited the Hyatt house when Hyatt passed away. It was tied up in probate for a while, and during that time, Owen Steely lived here with his family. He had two young daughters, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them soon. But what I know from the records is at that time, the lot went all the way back to Main Street. So the house sits on Water Street, but the lot went all the way back to Main Street. But I've also recently discovered that this house was not here during Lockwood Hyatt's time. And the lot went all the way to the far side of this house's lot. And all the way to Main Street over there. So we're gonna go stand in that corner back there. Okay, so William and Olivia Grissom owned the Hyatt house, the land that it sits on, the land that this house sits on, the land that that house sits on, and the land that this house sits on. So all four of these houses now sit on what was originally the land linked to the Hyatt house. Now, in 1899, they subdivided the land right along the property where this fence is. So they divided north and south between Main Street and Water Street. And they sold all of this land, where the Hyatt house sits and where that house currently sits, to John Dixon. So in 1909, John Dixon divided the land again. So when he bought it, he had half of the land. He had the southern half. Well, in 2009, he divided it again, and he divided it east to west. So as it is today, the Hyatt house, which we're looking at the back of, sits on the southwest corner of the original lot of land. That house, which was built in the early 1900s, sits on the southeast corner. And oddly enough, in the deed where he divides and sells that property, it mentions that includes the house that sits there. So what about the houses behind us? Well, I know that in 1909, William Grissom still owned both of these lots, but somewhere along the way, they were divided. Now, what are these houses? Well, you are about to see the back of the Captain Clark house, and over this fence is the Lockwood Hyatt house. So you got the Hyatt house and the Lockwood Hyatt house. And as best as I can tell, it's the Lockwood Hyatt house because all of this land and the land where it sits was owned by Lockwood Hyatt. So there's the story of how we got two Hyatt houses in town and how this land got divvied up.
So thanks for following along as we made more discoveries about what's been happening at the Hyatt House. Stay tuned for next week, where I feel pretty confident we will finally have some construction updates. See you soon.